Hi there, Section 14. Good to see you. It's Friday evening, the 27th. We are completing already our third week of the semester. Can you believe it? The weeks are going by like little boats that know us. And I think I just put in D2L that I was going to do this tomorrow, but looking ahead, I have got a lot to do tomorrow. A lot of schoolwork. I haven't even read your last journal entries, for goodness sake. So let's just get this done tonight. What more important thing could I do on a Friday evening than try to offer you a little video lesson? You know, I have a poem that I want to read you. It's not very long. I don't think it'll be too long. I read it to my humanities class today, and it won't take very much setup at all. I find it beautiful and a little bit unsettling, and hopefully I remember to explain why. Also, then I just got a couple things that I want to highlight for you from what I talked about at my Staples Comp 1. I almost called it my Stable Comp 1. All my Comp 1s are stable. And we'll just get there when we get there, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope you stay warm this weekend. I don't know if I should, I'll say the same thing to you that I said to my students today. It's going to be dangerous this weekend, so if you got a crap car and you're thinking maybe of gallivanting around in the Brainerd Lakes region, maybe don't, because it's going to be rough for a while, for about a week, and then it's going to warm up, and we're picking up sunlight every day, a couple minutes, so stay hopeful. To the poem, Claire Wahmanholm is a poet that was just kind of, well, I want to back up and put that a different way. I know Facebook is dead to you, and that's fine, because with all the young people gone on Facebook, it's almost like the old days. And I'm on it for a number of reasons. I think it's fun. I love watching my former students have babies. That's a big deal to me. And I also use it to promote poetry. And you would not believe how many major poets are on Facebook. And I'm friends with a whole bunch of them. And one of them, my Facebook poet friends, is Sean Singer, who's a professor and a poet. He's just got a new book out called Back in the Taxi. All he does on Facebook is just put up poems. Only, pretty much. And he doesn't really offer any commentary. He just, every day, he posts 3, 4, 5, 10 poems sometimes. And I'm so grateful to him. Claire Wahmanholm is a Minneapolis poet who I barely am aware of, barely knew of, published out of Milkweed Press in Minneapolis. And long ago, when it was Milkweed Chronicle back in the 80s, they published a couple poems of mine back when I thought I wanted to be a poet, before I became a poet chauffeur. This poem is unsettling to me because I love children more than anything. They're so important, and there's an attack on them right now by the forces of darkness, the final attack, in lots of ways. I'm not going to go into that right now or ever. Claire Wahmanholm, a poem with no children in it. Poem with no children in it. Instead, the poem is full of competent trees, sturdy and slow-growing. The trees live on a wide, clean lawn full of adults. All night, the adults grow older without somersaulting or spinning. They grow old while thinking about themselves. They sleep well and stay out late, their nerves coiled neatly inside their grown bodies. They don't think about children, because children were never there to begin with. The children were not killed or stolen. This is absence, not loss. There is a world of difference, the distance between habitable worlds. It is the space that is unbearable. The poem is relieved not to have to live in it. Instead, its heart ticks perfectly, unfretfully among the trees. The children who are not in the poem do not cast shadows or spells to make themselves appear. When they don't walk through the poem, time does not bend around them. They are not black holes. There are already so many knots in this poem. It is already so negatively charged. The field around the poem is summoning children and shadows and singularities from a busy land full of breathing and mass. My non-children are pulling children away from their own warm worlds. They will arrive before I can stop them. When matter meets antimatter, it annihilates into something new. Light, sound, waves and waves of something like water. The poem's arms are so late, they are falling upward from the body. Why are you crying? I'll darken my screen to cut some of the glare off my dorky, cheap cheater glasses. Okay, So a starting point in the studying of classical rhetoric, and this is where I began things with Staples. It's where I always begin with Comp 1. I put a V on the board. I cannot remember if I've done this on the video yet. I don't think so. I put a V on the board and I draw a line, and there's an A. When you see me do that in videos, this isn't the worst time to jot something down. We don't take a lot of notes in any of my classes. Once you start taking notes, you're not learning anything. The V in this very famous model that I'm going to be building over the next few days can stand for a writer or a speaker. That's the V stands for voice. The A stands for audience. An audience can be a reader or it can be a hearer. And always between any two speakers, any voice in any audience is a little question mark. And that has to do with truth-telling. Now, I asked some pretty bright juniors and seniors up at Staples Motley High School. Actually, I started this on Zoom. Maybe I've already put this before you. I asked them, okay, think for a minute. Don't answer right away. Who's responsible for the truth? Who owns it? Is it the speaker or a writer? Or is it the audience? Who's got the responsibility for it? Who's it on? And a very bright woman, I can just see the wheels turning. You can see thought if you teach long enough. You can see it, almost. And a really smart, quiet woman who seems very thoughtful. At first, she tilted towards the audience. Then she tilted back towards the voice. And then in the room, she fought through the dualism of it, right? I gave her an either-or choice, which is actually among the fallacies. And she really fought through it. She's like, wait a minute. I think it's both. Don't they both, depending upon the situation? I cannot overestimate, I cannot overstate how important it is to think about this, because I'm interested in the truth. And how you answer that question classifies you. But don't worry, you're right either way. This is an English class. This is not a math class where we're trying to find the right proof that kicks out of a quadratic equation. Things can get pretty fuzzy, pretty gray in English classes, especially when we are studying rhetoric. And to fill out the business here, let's add the V, or excuse me, I'm a little tired. Let's add the subject, the S. Anytime there's any kind of communication going on of any kind, some kind of voice is communicating something to an audience about some kind of subject or topic. And on other days, we're going to go into that part of it a little bit more deeply as we peel away these layers and make it a little bit more complicated. But this is where things get very important. I would call this important. And I get excited talking about this stuff. I just knocked over a bottle of hairspray stuff that I'm supposed to get for my wife, Avita. That's on my list of things to do. So basically what I had to very gently let these students know is the perception of truth and the telling of truth has gotten really fuzzy in this part of history that we're living in. Once I got this scratched up on the board at Staples, we could sort of play the game. And I know I got a little bit ahead of myself, but I put before them the example of a poem. And I went to two young men in the corner and I said, okay, let's say I give CJ a poem. AJ, rather. AJ reads it, and after a while, he thinks that he understands it, that he dials it in. He's got it. He's compassed out the meaning. And then I said to the class, okay, now I've given the same poem to Cyril. And Cyril reads the poem, and he thinks that he understands it. He thinks that he's got it right. And I asked the class, I've been doing this for years, but it's changing. I said, okay, can they both have valid interpretations? Absolutely. And I wouldn't disagree with that. I said, okay, what if there's 17 of you. What if I handed out 17 copies of this poem and 17 of you read it differently? Is that possible? Can that work? And they were like, absolutely. Now where I made them get a little bit confused, where they were kind of furrowing their brow in a not so sure manner, was when I said, okay, let's just cut to it. Let's say I take over the college. Let's say I take over Central Lakes College, and I just might. And not only that, I've not only taken over the college, I've summoned every single student, all 4,000 of you, from the Staples campus and the liberal arts campus to the South Lawn at Brainerd, and let's make it a nice day. I mean everybody. I want the heavy machine guys there in their bobcats, right, kind of trundling away. Well, they'd have to turn it off so we could hear the poem, but in other words, everybody. if I give that poem to 4,000 students, is it possible that there's 4,000 valid interpretations? There they were kind of not so sure. Although my classes in the fall, both my Comp 1 classes, they were like, absolutely. There can be infinite interpretations of a poem. I don't quite think like that. Would I want to be the teacher that just comes into the room and says, okay, I'm the teacher, I've got a sport coat or a cardigan where I get all my power, and we've read a poem and I will now tell you what it means. Such a class would not interest me, but on the other end of it, I don't think that the possible interpretations can be infinite. And I know I've been winding up to want to say something important to you. And oh, I forgot to tell you from the fall. I'm not breaching confidentiality because she said it in front of a class. She said it in public. I had a student named Maya Rose Severson. Mia. I never got that straight. Is it Maya? Oh, I mislearned her name. Anyway, Professor Rose Severson instantly blurted out, "Perception is truth. Perception is truth." I don't agree with that. And if that's how you think, we can disagree and still love each other through the differences and be friends. But I disagree with that. I don't believe perception is truth. But we live in an era where it is. They're not even close to synonyms. And I will conduct the same thing with you, even though I've got just a little white card instead of a piece of paper. I'll put a piece of paper on the desk, I'll put a white card in front of you, and this is what I did in Staples. Part of the online stuff is just me, okay, I did this, I talked about this, right? Just forget that. So I say, okay, here, I put a sheet of paper in front of Harina. That's the one woman I was talking about who's so smart. Okay, I've just put a white piece of paper in front of Harina. Imagine this. Imagine I come flying into the classroom and I'm a little late, which would never happen. I'm always on time to class, sometimes late to church. I come flying into the room, and out of my peripheral vision on the right, I see a flash of white. And what could that be? What could that be? Something white. And Odin, who's got a mythological name, blurted out, "It's paper." I said, "No, you're wrecking the game." Then they started playing it. Well, it could be a t-shirt. It could be spilled milk. It could be a hoodie. It could be snow. It's winter. It's January. And I said, yeah, it could be snow. I could turn and maybe wonder if Harina is fixing to throw a snowball at me. I'm not a philosopher. This is as close as I'm going to get to it. My head just can't think that way. But listen to me carefully. Only when I turn and pick up that piece of paper and maybe tick it with my finger, am I able to say, wow, this is a piece of paper. This is paper. The paper tells me that it's paper, you guys. Its paperness, it imposes itself on me. I don't tell it what it is. I'm going to put it this way, and maybe I'm not going to be gentle. I've seen young people do this for years, and maybe I'm the same sometimes. We all want to bend reality to our will. But the special and catastrophic mistake of not just your generation, but our society, planet-wide, is lost its mind. The catastrophic mistake is you want to look at an object and impose the whatness of the object on the thing. Don't do that. You cannot oppose the reality of an object upon the object. The reality of the object imposes it upon you, upon us. But we live in an era where people want to look at something and say, no, you're not paper. You're whatever I tell you. What that woman said, truth is perception, is a huge mistake. But we live in an era where that's true, where the truth is whatever we say it is, whatever our perceptions tell us it is. This apple's a little tired, but this is a Granny Smith apple. Please listen to me. No act of will is going to enable you to look at this apple and say, you know what, apple, thou art an orange, because I say so. It's just, don't, be careful. Be careful with that. We are redefining everything in the world. We are redefining ourselves. And we're losing track of the truth as far as I'm concerned. I had a strange story for those Staple kids too. A year ago, same month, I was teaching the same class and I was on my way to Staples, January day, 20 below, like what's coming this week. And I was going down the road and suddenly I realized I was going to do it with an orange. I forgot my orange. I was kicking myself. I'm like, come on, that's your thing. That was going to be your audiovisual aid. I'm not saying this is a miracle or anything, But at the precise perfect moment, I thought I forgot my orange. I was going through Bolus, Minnesota, on my way north, and it's like 10 seconds, 15 seconds after I said, dang, I forgot my orange, I looked on the side of the road and there was a flash of orange, and I'm like, was that an orange? There was no one behind me for miles, so I just backed up the truck and it was an orange, just sitting on the side of the road. Wasn't in perfect shape. It had a little bit of a wound to it. Miracle? No, some kid probably threw it out the window, but that is a very unusual coincidence. Stuff like that happens to me all the time. And this is probably an okay time to tell you that I don't much believe in coincidences. Although we have the idea of accidents too. I'm drifting. ADHD. I'm focusing. Let's delve into this reasonably quickly. I want to try to keep this under 25 minutes. Around each parts of this triangle, and you're going to have to imagine lines because I'm not so good with drawing lines, there's a particular kind of appeal that swirls around each. Around the voice, we have something called ethos. This is right out of Aristotle's rhetoric. For the ancients, ethos is comprised of three things, three characteristics: goodness, goodwill, and knowledge of the subject matter. By goodness, I mean morally good. I mean virtuous. I don't mean like good at speech making. The ancients valued this so much that a character would be good, that he would show goodwill towards the audience members, and that he knew what he was talking about. And I asked Staples, and I can ask you the same question, and maybe pause for just a second. Of those three things, goodness, goodwill, knowledge of the subject matter, which do you think are the most important? Does any one rise, transcend the other in terms of, importance? And they bit at that a little bit. Somebody said, knowledge matters. I want, if it's a teacher, a preacher, whatever, I want them to know what they're talking about. And yet, at the same time, I've had students in the years, it didn't happen yesterday, downplay it. Like I've had students say, I don't care how good a person you are, I just want a good teacher. Well, that kind of takes me aback. I don't know about that. So then I asked these sweet Staples kids yesterday, and I said, you know what? My self-esteem has taken a hit in the pandemic. I'll take a pat on the back or two here. I asked them, do I seem like a good guy so far? It's just we're week 2 there. And they were like, yeah. And I said, can you tell I love you guys? Can you tell I bear you nothing but goodwill? And they agreed. And I said, okay, at least so far, does it seem like I know what I'm talking about? And there was hearty agreement there. And then I revealed the problem. All three of those things can be faked. All of them. You can pretend to be good. You can pretend to show someone goodwill. Ever had a frenemy? You can lie and pretend that you know what you're talking about when you don't. And this is where things get a little bit frightening for me. Almost no one knows this. I hardly ever bring them up because forgive me, I don't like Adolf Hitler. But I'll tell you something quick about Adolf Hitler. The world would have been a much better place if he had just stayed a crappy watercolor artist. He was a painter. And instead, he decided to take up politics. He landed in prison. You might know that. You might know, too, that he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, which I would never pick up because it's as evil as he is. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't know. When he was locked up in jail for a while, he had a copy of Aristotle's rhetoric. And he read it backwards and forwards. And when he came out of that prison cell, he caused an entire country to absolutely lose its mind. And many millions of people died in concentration camps and on battlefields. And totalitarianism has come again. I don't feel like talking about World War III that's bursting into bloom on the other side of the planet, but I talked about that in my classes a little bit today. Maybe I'll address that very briefly in the next video. We're playing with fire, as you will see. You can use rhetoric for evil purposes, but you know this. You people are good people, I can tell. We have an awesome responsibility to use right rhetoric, good rhetoric, and use language well and virtuously. I believe in that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. We have a very important responsibility that I call very nearly sacred. We have to use language in ways that we could call good. Does that make sense? I'm sure it does. Around the audience, swirls something called pathos. That is an emotional centered appeal. And from that word, like you might maybe saw with the word ethos, we get our modern word ethics from that. From the word pathos, we get our modern word pathetic. Nobody wants to be called pathetic, but pathos is emotional. And I told my students, okay, we're going to talk about ethos a little bit. But I said, you will have no instruction, you need no teaching from me on the idea of pathos. I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And then I asked them, put your hand in the air if you know how to piss people off. Every hand went up in the air. Keep your hand up in the air if you know how to make someone happy. Keep your hand in the air. Excuse me. Keep your hand in the air if you know how to guilt your parents to get stuff. And at that point they were laughing, and they all realized that they were geniuses at pathos-centered appeals. They've got PhDs in it already. Around the subject, logos, subject, logos, logic swirls, and we'll do a little bit of that, a little bit of study of that. And I feel like I'm getting a little bit dry, and I'm at the 21-minute mark, and you deserve a slightly shorter video. So let's get this edited and get up to you. That's the gist of what I talked about up there. And I can't remember if I've given you a definition for rhetoric or not. I think I already have. That was part of it too. So have a great weekend. I'm going to try to get to your journal box number 2 tomorrow morning. I'm going to get up early, ski on my stupid ski machine. It's not as good as running, but it's anyway. And I think I'm going to throw this apple out on the yard for the deer. I got like 20 of them that live in my peat bog out there. My personal peat bog. Bless you. Stay safe and stay warm. Be safe this week, you guys. Minnesota will kill you dead if you mess around with it. So maybe don't.